Hi, everybody. My name is Katie. I am one of the owners of Yoga Shelter along with my business partner, Susan. I'm really excited to be here with you all today and talk about a topic that's pretty exciting. Not quite as exciting as all the philosophy and anatomy and um, information that you've gone over with Kathy and Malak over this training, but definitely hope that we can provide some useful tools and information for you to use as you move past yoga teacher training and into whatever it is that you're going to do next with this amazing certification that you'll be receiving soon. So just wanted to give a little bit of background about me first. I'm a yoga teacher. I own the Yoga Shelter Studios with Susan, and I've been teaching for a few years now. I did my training back in 2015. Kind of stayed away from teaching right after training. So some people will dive right into it and continue doing feedbacks and classes and practice teaching. And others, like myself, kind of just stepped away from the actual teaching and um, focused on, in my case, the studios. I was involved in the Grosse Pointe studio for many years before I took over the rest of them. So really happy to be here. If you are looking to teach or just kind of pause on your yoga journey or return back to work or kids or whatever it is that you're going to do, there are a couple of things that we want to do regardless. And the first one is I would highly recommend, if you haven't already, going on to the Yoga Alliance website. So you'll go on the Yoga Alliance website, and it's yogaalliance.org. So YOGAALLIANCE.org. And what you'll see is that there is two different standards that Yoga Alliance holds accountable. Number one, Yoga Alliance measures and manages yoga schools. So 200-hour, which is what you're in right now, or 300-hour, which are the two different versions of yoga schools that they manage. And the cool thing about this is that it holds the schools accountable to certain standards. As you can imagine, and as you probably know, there are hundreds and maybe even thousands of yoga schools across the country and across the world. And it is a way for studios to get more teachers, but also to supplement income for the studio. So once again, as you can imagine, it would be easier for some not so well-intentioned studios to just hold a training to churn out churn out teachers. So Yoga Alliance holds the studios to a standard so that they're not able to do that. So they're actually held to teaching and educating and preparing 200-hour teachers and 300-hour teachers to teach yoga in a safe and effective way. So it really is a good thing. It really is a positive thing. And as a yoga school, for instance, at Yoga Shelter, we have to submit our manual. We have to abide by certain criteria that Yoga Alliance has in order to call ourselves a registered yoga school with Yoga Alliance. And it's pretty strict. We submit the manual. They every so often do what they call an up-leveling, where we resubmit the manual. We have to make sure that our lead teachers are registered within Yoga Alliance and that they're credible teachers as well who are certified. And what the school gets when Yoga Alliance does that is we get this certificate that says we are 200-hour or 300-hour or both registered yoga school, RYS. The other facet of Yoga Alliance is teachers. So it does the same, it performs the same function for yoga teachers. So once you complete your school, just like if you went to college or anything, or a school for trade or anything, you complete your education and then you have to get certified. So the question always comes up, do I have to have a Yoga Alliance membership or registration in order to teach? And the short answer is no, you don't. There is not a rule or a law that says you have to. And some studios don't require that you're Yoga Alliance certified. I will say, however, that I have seen that shift, and most studios do require a Yoga Alliance certification. Yoga Shelter does require a Yoga Alliance certification. Many other studios do as well. And that's something I'm seeing more and more for the same reason that I mentioned the benefits of Yoga Alliance for yoga schools. It's the same benefit for yoga teachers. It allows a studio or any other employer of that yoga teacher know that they are being held to a standard, a basic standard. On the flip side, it doesn't mean that the teacher is a strong teacher, that they've been teaching for a number of years, but it does mean that at least they have that criteria, and then we can work to develop the teachers even further beyond their 200 or 300 hour training. So I don't have any plug for Yoga Alliance. I don't get credit for getting people registered for Yoga Alliance, but I do suggest that anyone who is considering teaching would go through the Yoga Alliance certification. So of course there is a fee. There's a one-time registration fee, and then there's a yearly dues that you must pay to remain registered as a 200-hour RYT. So once you complete the one-time fee plus the yearly dues, fill out the form on yogaalliance.org, you then are officially a 200-hour RYT. So what you need to do is, to do that is, like I said, you go onto yogaalliance.org, and you'll see the option to renew or register. You will, of course, click register if it's your first time doing this, and it will ask some information about you, and it will also ask what yoga school you attended. So you will search for Yoga Shelter, and you will actually click in the drop down, and you will upload your 200-hour certificate that you'll receive at the end of training. It will also ask for a review of the training. So one of the ways that Yoga Alliance, one of the criteria they use to make sure that the school is held to a standard is they actually ask the students of the school, so the 200 RYT graduates, to fill out a review and ask some questions about the school. It will then prompt Yoga Shelter to accept and click essentially that you did attend the school and complete the training. So there are a couple of stopgap measures to make sure that the school is being held accountable and that the 200-hour RYT graduates are being held accountable. Once you are registered and Yoga Shelter has said, yes, this student attended our school and they completed the training, you pay your dues and you're registered and you're a 200-hour RYT. Yay, congratulations. The question then becomes, what would you like to do with that 200-hour RYT? I opened the video at the beginning saying that, many graduates of 200-hour yoga schools end up not teaching, and that's okay. That's completely fine. As you probably can already tell, your life will be enriched, and whatever it is that you try to do moving forward, this yoga teacher training will have provided some guidance and hopefully helped you along that path. So totally acceptable. Lots of people don't ever teach after doing their training. And a lot of people like myself go through training, don't teach for a number of years, and come back to it years later. If you do decide to teach, what are the options moving forward? So as you know, there are many different directions and paths you can take in yoga teacher training. You can teach at Yoga Shelter to adults in a studio. You can teach to adults in many different settings, whether it be schools or sports teams or therapy sessions, or the list goes on and on. You can teach it to kids. There is an additional kids yoga certification that you can actually go to get and teach to kids. You don't need it to teach to kids, but I would recommend, if you do want to teach to children, some additional training. There is a local studio called Born Yoga. It is in Birmingham, and it's a kids-only yoga studio. They do incredible work, so that would be a good resource if you want to teach to kids. You can teach, you can go on to get additional certifications. So you can do certifications in yoga therapy, kids yoga, trauma-informed yoga, aerial yoga, sports yoga, so many different options. So check out Yoga Alliance for that as well. And, those are some of your options. If you do want to teach in a studio, recommendation there would be take classes. So I always ask any teacher who applies to teach at Yoga Shelter, how many classes do you take a week? How often are you taking class? What are your preferred classes to take as a student? Let the studio owners or managers or other teachers see you in the studio that you want to teach at. Become a part of that community. It's the best way to get to know people and see if that's where you want to teach, and let people see who you are, to see if they think you'd be a good fit for their studio. Practice. Practice, practice, practice. If you want to teach yoga, especially at the stage that you're in right now, at the end of this training, for most of you, this is the first time going through a 200-hour, I highly recommend practice. Practice to your pets, your parents, your friends, anyone who wants to take a class. It doesn't have to be a full class. You could practice for 15 minutes in front of the mirror. You can practice for, just calling out a sun A to some friends. And I also highly recommend recording yourself, whether it's just you doing a video recording on your own, alone in your room or in the shower, whatever you want to do, so you can hear yourself back and actually take your own class that's recorded. And then also, once you start practicing in front of groups, record those. Record how students react to you, record yourself, just really a lot of opportunities for you to hear yourself and see yourself teaching. Really helps. One of the most humbling things for me as a new teacher was recording my class and then taking it back, my own class. And it really helps you to hear some of the words that you use, the language you use, the inflection in your voice, things that you don't notice when you're teaching, especially new, because you're thinking of so many other things. Another recommendation, if you are going to be teaching in a studio or anywhere, is to chat with some of the teachers who are there. Get to know, get to know them, ask them questions, ask if you can observe their class. That is another really good way to see and notice what makes an effective yoga class. And it's always so interesting to me when you observe a class with notes rather than physically take the class, how much more or how different the experience is and what you can get out of it versus taking the class. Both are equally important, but just two completely different experiences. Now we are going to spend a little time looking at the Yoga Alliance website. So I want everyone to take about 5 minutes to log into Yoga Alliance. It is yogaalliance.org. Now that we've had a chance to take a look at the Yoga Alliance website, I want to talk a little bit about yoga insurance. So no teacher wants or expects any of their students to get hurt in class. But even with all of the education that you've received and all of the incredible cueing and modifications, learning that you've done, it is a potential that students may get injured. It may be because of a wide range of unpredictable reasons. They may have a pre-existing condition, or despite all your best efforts, students can have overuse injuries or push themselves too hard. So we want to make sure that as yoga teachers, we are insuring ourselves against any sort of liability because, of course, injury and or at the very worst case scenario, a lawsuit because of an injury can be pretty costly. And it is very rare that this would ever happen, but just like anything in life, we want to make sure that we are insured just in case, especially if we're making a business out of yoga and making a living out of teaching yoga, which is pretty special. So don't assume that you're covered. There are two different avenues that you're likely to go down. So number one is that you're teaching, privates or on your own, or maybe opening your own business for yoga. And in that case, we certainly want to make sure we have liability insurance specific to all of the areas of yoga that you're teaching. So don't just assume that one insurance will cover all. But if you're doing prenatal or kids yoga or any different other specialty, just make sure that that insurance covers all of them. The other avenue you can go down is teaching in a studio or for a company or organization. And again, in this case, don't assume that you're covered. Always ask the studio or your manager, wherever you're working and teaching, if there is any sort of liability insurance. Most cases there are not. And a lot of times a studio that hires a yoga teacher hires yoga teachers as independent contractors. And again, in that case, you'd want to make sure that you have liability insurance. As you can imagine, just like anything else, there are a lot of different companies you can go through for this type of insurance. You want to make sure that you have enough coverage and that you're going through a company that actually does specialize in yoga teacher insurance. Just a quick Google search and you'll find quite a few. Alliant Insurance is the one that if you're a member of Yoga Alliance, you get a discount on and a couple extra benefits. Teachers Plus is one that we've seen that runs around $70 a year, and you do have to renew it every year. All of these you have to renew every year. Alternative Balance is another one, and again, there are many others, and there is not one over the other that I promote or recommend, but just find one that best suits you and your needs as a yoga teacher. As a yoga teacher, you are able to write off some of your expenses on your taxes. And this is something that you will work on with your accountant, of course, but it is nice to just kind of see the list of some of the expenses that you're able to write off. So your Yoga Alliance registration, which is roughly about $115, you would be able to write off on your taxes. Yoga insurance, of course. If you do go and do CPR certification, which I highly recommend getting, that's something you can write off. Any yoga books, so anything that you bought for this training and any ongoing education that you purchase books for, you'd be able to write that off as well. And then any sort of workshops or additional training. So if you do decide to move on to a 300-hour teacher training or a specialty certification, and whatever it costs you, that's something you can write off on your taxes. So again, working with our accountant, but really being smart with some of our expenses, I recommend keeping track of the expenses that you incur over the next months or weeks or years as you embark on this journey. We've made it to the final segment of this Business of Yoga video. And this is my favorite part. This is the part that is the reason so many of us get into yoga in the first place. So many of us chose to do a teacher training. And really what makes the difference between a yoga teacher who is somewhat successful and one who is uber successful, especially in the studio space. and that is connection. So when we talk about and think about the business of yoga, there are so many steps that we just discussed that we need to take to make sure we have our certifications and our insurance and everything like that. But really, what we want to do is grow our community and build our community. And the single best way to do that is really just to learn how to connect with our students. And I know you're just finishing up this training and you've learned so much amazing information, and you practice connecting and you practice calling out flows, and you know, and you've seen yoga teachers do this so well. So this is where it's really fun to be able to start to apply some of the tactics and lessons that we've learned. So when I think about connection and yoga, there's so many unteachables that we have inside of us that we just yoga brings out, and it naturally helps to connect with other people. And when we do that, that's how we grow our classes, and that's how people want to take our classes, and that's certainly what's going to happen to you. The first step that you've already practiced so much of in your teacher training is being your authentic self. And there's nothing more attractive to want to take a class with a yoga teacher than with someone who's just really living and being their authentic self. And this isn't necessarily the place to talk about how to do that, but you've already done that in your training, and you'll continue to learn and grow just when you get out there and practice in your class and tell really cool, authentic stories in your themes. And really people will be drawn to that, and they'll be drawn to you and get to know you and see who you are. And that is something that helps with the business of yoga, because when we connect and we really, somebody relates to us or our story, they want to come back. They want to come back to our class because they can see that we're doing the work and that we are, again, our authentic self. So that's one part of the connection, and we could do a whole workshop on that for days. And the other part is just showing up. So I often say, at least at Yoga Shelter, that we I don't know how it is at other studios. I'm assuming that many studios are similar, but we say that when you take on a class as a new teacher, whether you're new to teaching in general or just new to the studio, we ask for a commitment. We ask for a year commitment to that class. And it's not necessarily because, well, it is partly because we want consistency in the studio and that the students, don't have too much change and upheaval, but it's mostly because that is really what we've seen as a way that teachers are successful, by showing up and having the students see that you're showing up every single week. We also ask, we have a sub limit when teachers are starting out. So if you take on a class, we ask that you're not subbing out more than 10% of your classes in a year. And again, it's so that the students have that consistency and they get to know you and get to know who you are as a teacher. And that's all part of connection to your students. If you're not showing up and you're not, you're subbing out your class, or, you take on one new class and then want to take on another one and give up your old one, it really doesn't bode well for the studio or the students from a connection standpoint. I will be on with your group for a question and answer session to be able to answer any questions that you may have based on this video today and anything else that might come up regarding Yoga Shelter in our studio. I always say at this point of the training that you are all now forever a part of Yoga Shelter's family. And whether you continue to teach and go on the path of teaching or not, we know that you'll be in class practicing, and you will always be a part of our teaching team because you are a 200-hour Yoga Shelter YTT graduate. And there is no more incredible feeling than accomplishing this training and continuing on and growing within this amazing community of people and yogis and other teachers who have walked this path and continue to walk the path with you over the years. I sincerely thank you for being a part of this training. I thank you for listening to this video. I am so excited to hopefully take each and every one of your classes if you do decide to teach. We are always open and available in this community, and it's all about just showing up and being there for each other. So I look forward to seeing you in class. I look forward to seeing you in the studio. I look extra forward to seeing you for the question and answer session. So please write down your questions. Take a look at the Yoga Alliance website, register, um, write down whatever comes up from looking at the website, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have that come up, which I know that they will. The next slide will have my contact information as well as my business partner, Susan. We are always open to talking to recent grads about any and everything that might come up now that you are done with your training. Thank you so much for everything that you've done. What an amazing accomplishment to be at the end of this training. And namaste.